Hello, and welcome to video 6 of the Knights of the Highlands as 3.5 Dungeons & Dragons characters. Sir Cedric Winterborn, Master of the Ebon Hold. So, before I dig into the model, I want to say a little bit something about the Knights of the Highlands. We have, as an order, very few rules. One of the only rules that we maintain is that whoever the oldest, and not physically but in lineage order, whoever the oldest knight who is active, and we decide activity on our own basis, like whether or not we're going to be active for the year is the head of the order. And so, even though, if you'll remember from the intro video, Cedric is the 4th knight in order, the 3 knights that are ahead of him do not hold the title of Master of the Ebon Hold. They are not the head of the order. Fluff-wise, and also for the last probably 5 years or so in sword fighting, they've been absent or inactive, and so Cedric has filled that role for us this year. Actually, in 2017, unless someone else declares active before the beginning of next month, Sir Locutus will be for the first time head of the order. So that'll be a new role for him. But for most of my sword fighting career, especially my time as a Knight of the Highlands, Cedric has been head of the order, and so that has translated here. So let's look at the model real fast, and then we'll dig into the character sheet and kind of like what the head of the knight, the Master of the Ebon Hold does. So looking here at the model, Cedric's colors are blue and white, and then he is a elite blood falcon, so his unit colors are red and black. And that's a set of colors that are, red, blue, white, black, kind of opposed to each other, so I struggled a little bit representing all of them here on the model. So very little of Cedric's war gear here as a knight, since his knightly colors are blue and white. Very little of his very little of his war gear is painted red and black, but he does have those elements here. So kind of going through what colors are here, the skin is Rakarath flesh. I've got some Abaddon black, some Mephiston red, Caldor Sky blue, Ceramite white, Retributor armor gold, Leadbelcher, of course, on all of the metal, Mournfang brown on the leather pieces, and that looks like it. So here, kind of on the model, we've got the metal shoulder pieces, metal greaves, metal vembraces. He's got armor under that surcoat of his there, that's kind of not showing. That we'll see when we get to the character sheet. And then if you turn and look at his shield, I've incorporated like a blue gem, kind of a white piece of trim there, but most of it is red and black, kind of pointing at the Blood Falcon heritage. Here on his back, he does have a greatsword. It's been a really long time since I've seen Cedric fight with a two-handed weapon, but I know he can, and quite well. In fact, he's been spearing mostly for the last few years. And then he's got there in his hand that kind of kick-ass looking, really ornate sword. That will have, I'll explain kind of that, but that's a specific weapon from the Magic Item Compendium. And then, he's got that helmet there. And then kind of switching to the side, you can see there on his belt, he's got a kukri, which is kind of a cool knife. And then on the other side, he's got a red potion, which, if you play video games, that's going to be a healing potion. Even though in D&D, healing potions aren't red. But just for ease of transferring that to the model and actually getting some more red on it, that's what I went with there. So there's the model. Cedric is clearly coming at you shield first. Ced's really famous for offensive shield work, so I put him in kind of a shield punching stance, ready to deliver that shield edge to your face or possibly other parts. And then, there's that really nifty magic sword there. So all in all, a fun model and a challenging model to kind of paint. He's lost some detail in the sculpt, so I kind of had to make it up with paint. And again, I'm only a tabletop quality painter. Getting better. But so struggling to fit all that in was, this was a difficult paint for me. And then it's hard to tell, and even harder in pictures than if you were holding the model. But he does have like a little goatee there, which is reflective of the real world. And I did salt and pepper it a little bit, which is also reflective of the real world. So there is Sir Cedric's model. Let's move on to the character sheet. So, again, I talked about how I reached levels in Sir Rem's video, so if you want to know more about that process, you should start there if you haven't already seen it. But we have here Sir Cedric Winterborn, Master of the Ebon Hold, Paladin 4, Crusader 9, Ruby Knight Vindicator 7. So Paladin and Crusader are required in combination. You can get there with Cleric too, but to get into Ruby Knight Vindicator is a prestige class from the Book of Nine Swords, and Cedric in Belegarth is probably one of the best teachers I've ever met. He focuses so hard on not just academic learning, but physical learning. He comes from a sports background, so he has kind of a coach mentality when he approaches sword fighting. And so he's probably one of the best people, if you want to learn anything, and if he's still going to be around. I know he just went inactive, not just for the Knights of the Highlands, but kind of with the whole sport. He's kind of moving into retirement. But if you get a chance to learn from him, do so, especially if you're talking about aggressive shield techniques. But I thought it was very important to kind of take that mentality and the Book of Nine Swords kind of scholarly approach to sword magic, or blade magic, which is what they call it. And so I really wanted a prestige class out of that book for Cedric. So there that is. I'll dig into some of the specifics for what that does after we've kind of gone through the front page. So look in there, Strength 20, Dex 14, Con 20, Int 14, Wisdom 17, Charisma 17, all reflective of an individual who spent 20 plus years in the sport, cultivating friendships, getting people to follow him, starting realms, all those things that you'd expect a knight to do. He's done. Grapple mods plus 25. But let's look at that combat options box. Base attack 20, 15, 10, 5. That's the max for the straight fighter progression. That sword is the Blade of Righteous War, which is actually a part of a set of items of Righteous War, which gives several attack abilities, defense abilities, and then like a con bonus if you need it, kind of emergency hit points. So it's part of a set that all works together. And then he's got a +1 greatsword there on his back, and then of course the kukri at his waist. Dropping down to armor, AC 27. It's one of the highest armor values among the Knights of the Highlands, but you'd expect the guy who's leading them to be hardest to hit. So +2 full plate of nimbleness. One of Cedric's things is even when I see him fight in full armor, he's always got this set of moves, and he's made sure that his armor doesn't restrict him in any way. So that's where the nimbleness comes in. Shield-wise, he does have that Bastion of Righteous War. That's part of that panoply of war, of Righteous War, that kind of goes into, that's with the sword, and then there's a helmet that's a part of that group. So, and then last thing on that first page, 167 hit points, nice solid hit point round out for a 20th level character. Not the highest among all the knights, but getting up there. Hitting that second point, I didn't fill out his experience points because honestly I wasn't sure where to put him. So anything that'll put him in over 20th level is fine. If you want to take Cedric into epic level, I highly suggest finishing the last 3 levels of Ruby Knight Vindicator. It'll make for some really good synergy with kind of the things that come next, and then possibly going back to Paladin. Crusader and Ruby Knight Vindicator who have levels in Paladin can go back. That's one of the specific things that it says, kind of why I chose Paladin. And also, Paladin and Crusader kind of reflect Cedric's interest in the Knights Templar and his early kind of Belegarth career around being a crusading knight. So, you'll see there that he's got the adventuring gear. That'll be common among every Knight of the Highlands. The Knight's livery as well. And then you'll also see here Lordly Holdings. The Lordly Holdings are not the hereditary Lordly Holdings that, Sir Shirl had, or even some of the other knights will have as we go on. But they are the Ebonhold itself. And so that will pass down to whoever the next Master of the Ebonhold is, whoever the next head of the Order is. But while he is in that position, he is, kind of like a knight, Lord Commander in Game of Thrones for the Night's Watch. He is considered to be nobility, and so he can move in those circles and, has those forms of dress that would make him, nobility. So, dropping down into the magic items worn, he's got the Helm of Righteous War, which is the last part of the Panoply of Righteous War. Those benefits are great, and they kind of work really well all in concert together. He's got the 2 rings, Ring of Lightning Flashes, which lets him lightning bolt somebody with the ring. That ring of protection, again, I mentioned in previous videos that we were going to see those be kind of common. And then Gauntlets of War, which just, allow him to get extra attacks of opportunity and allow him to strike back at someone who struck him. So, great set of magic items, all give excellent synergy. And then combining that with the maneuvers and stances that the Crusader and Ruby Knight Vindicator give, sets up for the ability to inspire others. So with those stances, and then also to really punish anyone he can catch with a maneuver, which if you fought Cedric, you know that that's pretty much what happens. Zipping over to that third character sheet page, here we have an example of one that's kind of filled out. Cedric only has 2 spells. They are paladin spells, so they aren't very powerful, and chances are going to be kind of last-ditch healing or maybe consecrate, or sorry, not consecrate, maybe bless, something like that, to use in a pinch, but he's not really a spellcaster. Those are just kind of things that come with the paladin level, so 1-in-1, a first and a second level spell, nothing special caster-wise, that's not his role. So whatever you choose to use, if you're going to use Cedric, that's what they are, and they should almost always be personal, either buffs or heals, so that he can kind of, last ditch heal himself, or possibly buff if in that, if need arises. So really simple sheet there. Zipping over to the 4th sheet, kind of to wrap it up. If you're looking again at a signature skill, what really stands out here among Cedric's skill block is the plus 23 diplomacy. He is a leader of men, and so and women, because Sir Shirl's there. And not only that, he's a public figure who has to move among the nobility if you watch the intro video, in a world that's kind of fighting itself, at least spirit, in the essence of the world, if not physically, it hasn't come to blows. So this is a man who needs to be able to navigate both the battlefield and the court with equal grace and aplomb, and he needs to feel, at home doing both. And so that diplomacy really helps when dealing with other nobles. It really helps when helping get his people riled up and in line and ready to go. Some other kind of big skills: concentrations at a plus 16, balance at a plus 17. If you've ever tried to knock Cedric over, it's tough to do, and so that's kind of reflected there. Sense motive at a plus 13. Again, that's kind of the courtly intrigue. And then knowledge, religion, all of his knowledges: history, nobility, royalty, religion, and martial lore. They're all at plus 12. If you've ever met Cedric, he's a prolific reader. He's an amateur historian. He doesn't do it for work, but it's certainly a passion of his. And then studying combat techniques, specifically for the SCA and for Belegarth, but like historical combat techniques. So those all fit with having high knowledge scores. Zipping over to the racial traits and class features, those are kind of all built up from his 3 classes. Aura of Good, Detect Evil, Smite Evil once a day, Divine Grace, Lay on Hands, Aura of Courage, Divine Health are all from, and Turn Undead are all from the Paladin. Furious Counterstrike, Seal Resolve, Indomitable Soul, Zealous Surge, a second Smite because it is different, Divine Recovery, Divine Impetus, and Armored Stealth are all from his Book of Nine Swords classes, the Crusader, and then the Ruby Knight Vindicator. Looking at feats: Weapon Focus Longsword, Shield Specialization. I have Weapon Specialization Longsword here. I know it says in the fighter book that you can't take it. I typically allow my martial classes that aren't fighters to take Specialization without having that 4th fighter level, but I don't allow them to go any higher on the chain. I think it's ridiculous that you can't take the one that gives you damage unless you are a fighter, even though there are a number of other martial classes. So that's kind of one of those feats where I kind of remove that. I still make them have character level 4th, typically character level 4th in a martial class, which the Paladin certainly fits. But I don't think that holding that one to just fighter. Anything greater, like greater weapon focus, greater weapon specialization, I do require those fighter levels for. But I think that one's fine for any martial class. Power attack, cleave, great cleave. And then probably 2 of my favorite feats especially for Cedric. He's got eyes in the back of your head. That's what that eyes, it boy head. It's actually an acronym because eyes in the back of your head will not fit on that little line. They don't give you a ton of space. That means you can't be flanked, which if you fought Cedric, he has no problem fighting 2 or 3 on 1. And then close quarters fighting. One of the things that you'll know, if you know Cedric at all in Belegarth, he likes to get in close. His weapons, his swords are all typically short. He likes to deliver up in your face, kind of blows and maneuvers that are right at home among alignment in football. So that's kind of his approach to fighting, and I've very much carried that over to the character sheet. And then one last thing with the languages, Celestial and Terran. I'd said before that I wanted to try to create a balance of languages amongst the Knights of the Highlands, kind of from a metagame standpoint. That may not necessarily happen, but certainly with the Paladin, Crusader, Ruby Knight, Vindicator levels, that would all point to knowing Celestian. And then Terran was kind of one of those unique languages that not a lot of people know. It's the Earth Elemental language. Cedric's got in his personal life, he has some Middle Eastern descent. He is of partially Middle Eastern descent, and so being around that much sand, it's kind of an inside joke with us that might be a language his D&D character might know. So that's included here with the Terran language, and also Idaho. If you're here, we're high desert. There's a lot of sand. You go out 20 miles in any direction from a city, and you've got a ton of if not like dune sand, then you're still dealing with like sandy kind of clay base. Land, so there's sand everywhere here, so it makes sense. So that's kind of that's Cedric. That's the Master of the Ebb and Hold. The Master of the Ebb and Hold is responsible for coordinating all the other jobs. So we've talked about Sir Diomedes, who is in charge of the brewery and the distillery. We've talked about Sir Shurl, who is in charge of the aviary. We're going to see other jobs come come along. They all answer directly to the Master of the Ebb and Hold, and so he's got an administrative role, which that diplomacy and those skills certainly help. But he's also got a combative role. Whenever the knights muster together, which is extremely rare that all of them would go to battle together, so my PCs are in for a future treat. But if they all go to battle together, he's the battlefield commander. As we're going to see with a future model, there is kind of a sortie commander, so someone who takes small groups of knights. And then if there's no designated commander, it's whoever has lineage order, just like with who's the Master of the Ebb and Hold, whoever has lineage order is in charge. But in particular, when they all muster together, even if Thanos or Sir Thane, Dorman, or Tasis are on the field, Cedric is still the battle commander. And so, and you'll see when we get to those 3 models that each of the 3 knights that have seniority over Cedric, they all have a very special job that is kind of necessary for a long-term knight to have. And so we'll see why they kind of have given up their tenure as Master of the Ebb and Hold. And one of them has never held it. Sir Tasis, and when we get to his video, I'll talk about how he's never been Master of the Ebb and Hold because he's had this other job, while Thanos and Dorman have shared 10 years being Master of the Ebb and Hold. But it's been Cedric for as long as many of the younger knights have been a part of the Order. So, fluff-wise for my game, we're looking at, someone who's been in charge of the Ebb and Hold for a decade or more. That's going to wrap up video 6. Hopefully you guys are having as much fun, watching these and looking at the models and talking about fluff as I am. Video 7 should be around, on its way soon. We'll get into some more of the spellcasters and some more people with specific jobs, and we'll continue to define kind of what and how the Ebb and Hold works. Again, if you have any questions, hit me up on Facebook, comment in the comments below, and I'll try to get back to you. Thanks very much, and have a great day.